Recording. Okay, so yeah, that's for you guys. Well, yeah, so I am going to just share my screen here so we can make sure we're all where we wanted to be this evening. So there we go. So hopefully everybody can see that. So this is, like, we think our 17th year of holding this class. We have held regional classes. We have held classes online since the pandemic. And we are just, no matter how we do this, we are just so excited to have you all, just come and learn with us and learn from each other. That's, even though we're online, there's just such a huge benefit in us being able to connect this way and for us to be able to bring you, I think, just some really great information as you evaluate, beginning or expanding a farm business. So we'll be excited to hear what you all are interested in doing. And do let me know. I've tried to send out, a reasonable amount of emails. So let me know if you're not getting them, if you're having problems accessing any of the materials, just let me know and we'll figure that out as going forward. If there's anything we can do to make this, a good learning, better learning experience for you, please just let us know. So first, a couple of introductions. So Nicole Dodaro and I are your hosts for this program this year. Dawn Thilmany is one of the founders of the program, and so she is a repeat presenter, kind of the cornerstone of our strategic business planning. So we'll have her do an introduction as she starts her presentation. But I just wanted to let you know who we are, so you know who you're going to be working with for the next 8 weeks. I am an extension specialist with Colorado State University and have been here for about 18 years. I work in ag business management and food systems and have had the privilege of working with producers all around the state. And now, as part of our regional food business center, I have had the opportunity, or am getting the opportunity, to work with food farm producers all around the region. And so it's just a really exciting time to be in agriculture. I know there are lots of challenges, but I hope that we're able to, curate materials and support you all so that, you can make really great decisions moving forward, and we can help you. You'll see we use the word risk management a lot, just happens to be in my background. So we want to help you manage any risks and benefit from, resources to the best of our ability. So Nicole.
Hey everyone, I'm Nicole Dodaro and I'm an extension specialist on the western slope of the state, and I get to work with Martha and Dawn, which is really a privilege because I'm a new extension person as of the past couple years, but I've been at Colorado State for a long time and I'm really passionate about helping people in ag, whether you've been in it for a while or you're just starting out. So I'm excited to get to know you all, and you're in good hands and in a great state for ag.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, so, we would just want to let you guys know that you are joining probably about 500, we estimate, other producers who've gone through this class. So I think, we've had a chance to refine the curriculum and the materials that we use. And that is not to say, though, that we don't change things as conditions change, market conditions, business development conditions, as we learn new strategies as well. And so I think we're going to be bringing to you, this year, a really exciting class. So, just a couple of things that I think we wanted to let you guys know is, there are, so that's the welcome that we were just kind of going through. So some of the things that we have found that, as you go through this class, it's online, so we're not in person, but there are some strategies that can really help you benefit from this format and from this community, which, as you're going to see when we do introductions, spans the state, which is just really exciting. And so the first thing is, we're going to try to give you as many opportunities to be connected with each other as possible, and that means also connecting you to community organizations, our extension colleagues, colleagues on campus with Colorado State University and other institutions around the state. And so you'll see as we go through this, we're really going to try to keep you connected to resources. So take advantage of those, or if there's something you're finding, that we haven't presented as an opportunity, just feel free to reach out and ask us about it. Reach out to, your fellow we'll say classmates here, reach out to us. We'll hold some office hours as we go along. So if you would like assistance with a review of your business plan or help with a worksheet, we'll set those up so that you can have more one-on-one time. But that's just another way, for you to get some support and maybe get a little more direction if you find that you need it. So there are, lots of different ways to be involved. I think, one of the things that we would ask is that everybody is in a different place, and we really hope that you will respect each other's ideas and opinions and goals and strategies. I think, that part is really important, is just thinking of yourselves as part of a community that is emerging. And in your particular area, depending on where you are, you may be one of those foundational ag community members, particularly if you're a newer producer. So, I think we just like to cultivate an environment of respect and a space where people feel like they can be heard, they can express themselves. And, it's just that kind of a good learning environment. And I think, Nicole, you wanted to talk a little bit about being on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm sure quite a bit of people are used to this by now, but honestly, I really like review. And for those who aren't, this is a great time to just practice some Zoom etiquette. So normally just being on time is great, communicating if that is an issue, being mindful of background noises or distractions to yourself or the viewers. And then muting when you aren't speaking is great. I love when people can speak up readily, but it just kind of helps keep the noise distractions down. And then trying to avoid multitasking. This is one of the hardest ones for me, especially on a computer. I don't really like sitting, especially for long periods of time, but really trying to do that. That is a bit hard with a long class. So ways that help me do that are by having your favorite reasonable beverage just to have in hand, so you're not busy with your hands on other things, or if you're busy with your hands, that's good for learning, great. And then taking notes or being comfortable in where you're sitting. You can also stand to kind of stretch, and we'll have breaks too. And if you need a break, don't hesitate to let me and Martha know in the chat that you need to just go and come back. And then with comments, like Martha said, in discussion, be respectful of instructors and fellow students and speakers, but also try and be respectful of yourself. It can be really intimidating to speak up on Zoom because you can't really read the room. And so something I like to do is to use the reactions button down at the bottom of your screen. If you click the little arrow to the right of that, or just click reactions, you can do anything from giving a thumbs up or clapping or raising your hand. And that one's a really good one if you want to speak up. And that final thing I'll say is on Zoom with so many people, it's really easy to become a Zoom hog, like I might be doing right now, where I'm talking for a long time and there's a lot to get through. So just trying to be mindful of the fact that wrapping up a thought a little bit more succinctly is really helpful to get everyone's voices to be heard.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And I will just say, I have seen some pretty crazy multitasking. I've watched people fold their laundry. It's entertaining, but we have to do what we have to do, but we really hope, you'll try to set yourselves up for success here in this class. So the format of the class, we've tried to make it really varied so you won't be compelled to do your laundry or vacuum or something like that. So we've got a couple of things here that we wanted to just let you know basically how we set this up. And so we're going to walk you through really the high level, how do you even start looking at strategic business planning? What does that mean? What are some basic tools that you can use to get started thinking about developing a business plan and getting started on the right foot? Our next, so that's this class, and we're going to hear from two producers who have a lot of experience and really varied stories to relate to you, and time for questions and answers from them. And then generally we try to do a group exercise. So this is where don't be shy. We want to put you in breakout rooms and get you talking to each other, and we'll mix those up every time. So you won't be in the same breakout room, but that'll be another way to get to know folks. Our class after that, getting started in agriculture, is a panel discussion. And Nicole, do you want to talk about how we've set that up this year? It's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, this year we are really excited that we get to have one of our really great farmer friends, Jesus Flores, join us. And so typically in a lot of agricultural programming, there aren't a diverse group of voices at the table. And so we're having the opportunity to let Jesus speak in Spanish, which is the language of his heart. He's from the San Luis Valley and he's been in ag for a long time, and he's really involved in the communities across the state. But he'll be speaking in Spanish for that class and presenting in that way. But because Zoom allows us to do this, we're going to have an interpreter who's going to let you all listen and speak in the languages of your heart, which we're accounting for as English. If you need other services, please let us know. But it'll be really fun, and it's going to be a little different, and I'll make sure I can support on that. But Martha, did you want to describe anything further about that?
No, I think we'll, when you all join next week, we will be sending a different Zoom link just for this class for next week. So we'll send it to you like 3 times to make sure you have it. It's just, we just had to do it this way to get it set up for the interpretation. And we're hoping eventually to be able to do more and more of this class in Spanish or in another language. But this is, as Nicole said, we're really trying to make sure that what we do is, really reflects the agricultural communities of Colorado. Peter, yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just curious, will future sessions after next session use this original link?
Yes, exactly. This is that just next week is uniquely another link. And then after that, we'll be coming back to this one. So I promise to not leave you guys, wondering where we're going to be. I'll make sure everybody gets to the same place. But that is our panel discussion with producers, and it'll give you a great opportunity to talk to some farmers from around the state and find out, just get to ask them about lessons learned, what they would recommend, how they got started. It's just a great interactive session. So that's really all, hearing from those farmers and having the opportunity to ask them questions as well. Then, of course, we have a couple of classes on risk management. And so we split that into 2 parts. And I'll just kind of describe what we have. Our first class, we're going to be looking at more kind of managing legal risks, so contracts, setting up employment, and looking at the role of insurance. And then we have a producer who's going to talk about how he manages production and marketing risk in his operation and how his strategies have changed over the years. So that's our February the 13th class. And then we're going to take a deeper dive into looking at how you can organize and analyze financial information so that you can start to make decisions about pricing, costs of production, and then how you might procure assets and make other types of decisions for your business. We'll come back to managing risk, and we'll look at water law, because that's really important. And we're not going to do like a boring coverage of it, but we're going to look at just what you need to know about water rights, and then also look at what NRCS resources are out there for you. And then we have a session where we're going to spend the rest of that class connecting you to community organizations. And we feel like being set up with different community groups can really help you manage risk and just help you feel like you're supported and you're not alone in your business. So you've got those connections and support. Our last class where it's really content and you're working on building that your business plan is where we're going to talk about FSA loans as well as financing loans and grants through the Colorado Department of Agriculture, other sources. Put some resources for you guys, put those together so you have a way to develop a budget. And then the last two classes we had, because this class is so big, so here's a bit of a surprise. We did have to add a class. So we're going to do business plan presentations on March 11th and 12th. I realize that date of the 11th may not work for some of you. We're hoping we can split the class over those two dates, and we'll talk more about what those business plans really entail. But we really want to have enough time that everybody can present their plan, be heard by their peers, and just have that experience. We feel like, you know, that's a really important outcome of this class is we move you down the road of putting your business plan together. All right, so before we do that, are there any questions so far? And there might be some in the chat.
No questions in the chat at this point.
Great, Nicole, take it away.
Okay, so yeah, if you can see the screen, great, but I'm going to say it out loud for folks who are joining over the phone. And if you're on the phone and you can't chat in, then if you could just raise your hand, or I'll keep an eye on your name, but we'll make sure you get to speak about the answers to these questions. So if you could, in the chat, put your name, your farm name, and even if that's a farm name that you're thinking of, if you don't have a farm yet, that's totally fine, where you or your farm are located, and then the one thing you just can't do without for your operation. And again, if you don't have a farm yet, just get creative and think about it. And yes, all classes are recorded to reference back to, right, Martha?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so once again, your name, your farm name, whether it's happening or not yet, where you or your farm are located, and the one thing you just can't do without on your operation. So it could be equipment, a person, or an animal. And try and put it all in the same chunk of information so we can just see it one time for you.
Yeah, and sorry, Nicole, I was preemptive and have them actually change their name with some of that.
Yeah.
So we can go back, so I can go back and remember, but then the chunk of information they can share in the chat box. That's perfect.
Great. I saw that, Dawn. I like that about you. You've been doing this long enough that you had the prompts just memorized. I love it. Great. I'm seeing some information come in. And if you don't know your farm name yet, don't worry about that. You can even just say don't have a farm name yet. Oh, I love that someone said their farm doggy patches they can't do without.
I told you there'd be a broad fork, Nicole.
Yeah.
I told you.
There's a Durango person. That's great to see.
Yeah.
Ooh, mini Japanese truck. Sounds amazing. Wonderful.
If you have a picture of that mini Japanese truck, you might
Yeah.
just share that one of the breaks. I wanted to see what it looks like. That'd be cool.
We have a mechanic here who specifically only works on Japanese farm
Ooh.
or all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive automobiles. It's really interesting.
Oh, we have someone whose main thing is irrigation water. When do we tell them we can't fix that problem? We'll help problem solve, but irrigation's, that is something you can't go without as a farm, but it's tricky in Colorado.
Yeah.
So it
Great,
looks like
thanks for doing
there's,
this, you guys.
yeah, there's two people on the phone. Could the number ending in 9099 share their name and farm name, where you're located, and one thing you
Yeah,
can't do without?
I did. That was Peter Furness
Oh, perfect.
towards
Thanks, Peter.
the top there. Yep.
And then, is there another phone number? Nope, that's it. Great. Peter, are you able to see the presentation?
I am, yeah.
Okay, cool. Is it Palisade Farmer?
Yeah, sorry. I just dialed in because it's easier for me to mute on my phone.
No worries.
All right. Do you think we have everybody, Nicole?
You're not done, raise your hand or give us a signal you need a second. You can
And I'll
speak
just
up too.
slowly move over here. All right. Okay, so I think that we are rounding out introductions and overview. I think, we'll circle back to some resources at the end of the class. I definitely want to leave Dawn, who probably drove like a maniac from Denver to get here on time, and traffic cooperated. So I want to leave her with enough time. And then after we talk to Dawn for a bit, then we're going to take a little break. And during that break, Nicole has a short little exercise there. And then we'll come back and hear from Michael Moss and then from Ariane, and then have a chance to do some Q&A with both of them, and then move into our breakout exercise. So I'll look for other questions or comments in the chat, but I think I am gonna stop this presentation, and Dawn, you should be able to get started.
Yeah, well, thank you, Martha. And as you were just told, I was a founder of the program, but it's in the able hands of Martha and Nicole now. But they still humor me by letting me be a part of some of the instruction of the course. You'll see me a few times actually this spring, including at office hours and the business plans. But just for some background, so I'm a professor of Ag and Resource Economics here at CSU. Have been here since 1997, so I'm getting to be one of the long timers. And basically was teaching a lot of the same content in a semester-long course on campus. And when some of our extension folks kept getting questions from people trying to start farms and food businesses, they asked if I was willing to do a translation and a compression of those course materials from campus into something that was more usable, inexpensive or cost-effective, and appropriately formatted for you all. It always was a lot funner to do them in person because I got to make a lot of friends, and I'm still friends with people who took this class almost 20 years ago. But this has made us our ability to actually make it available to more of you better. That said, we're going to make our best effort to try to get you to some events and activities now that you're part of our family, so that we do get to build a relationship with you long term, even though it can't happen as fully during this class. So that said, I do talk really fast. Part of it is because we're going to try to cover a lot, but two things: knowing I will be in some of those small breakout groups for clarification, and that you will be able to ask questions even as I'm speaking if you want to, and the other host will tell me if I need to stop and slow down and clarify anything. And that the good thing about particularly this first topic is I'm almost introducing you to some things that you'll have reiterated both by the producer speakers, because they took this class and they can tell you how they put it into place for their operation, but also like even when we go back and revisit markets, a lot of these same concepts come up. So this is your first foray, but almost everything we'll talk about tonight, either one, you'll hear about at least one more time, so we can go quicker, or second, I gave you some resources and places that you can go learn more, either in worksheets or here in the slides themselves. So with that, I'm going to start. So we start with strategic business planning, because even though it's what a lot of people think of as very high level, that 100-foot or 1,000-foot level, it's really kind of the most important step, because, and we've had a lot of people even who've taken this class reconsider a direction they were going to go, because you really do have to think foundationally about, besides the passion you have for what you want to do, how it fits into the marketplace and environment you're working in as well. So that's, we want to get people thinking big and not just about putting out the fires at that 10-foot level that farmers and farm business so often have to do. To inspire how we ended up doing this in Colorado so long ago, the map here, it's a little dated now because the new census isn't out yet. The darker you color you see a county, the more beginning farmers there are in that county as a share of total farmers. And you'll see we are one of the pockets of a high amount of beginning farmers in the state compared to the national average. So we saw the call for these programs long ago, and in fact got our first grant to do this way back in 2009. So we want to give credit to the USDA for helping us actually establish this program. But we also had colleagues doing work in this space for a very long time. So we draw heavily for some other resources that are out there, including this Building a Sustainable Business book that's online. You can use it free. The problem with it, as you see from some of the page numbers we draw from, it was an over 200-page book, which just overwhelmed the heck out of people. So what we decided to do is really draw, first, because it's free, so we don't have to make you buy anything. Draw from a relatively free resource that you can keep using for years, but we try to help you target the pages we thought were really useful at this point in time in your career. And then the second resource we found that's out of University of Arizona, Ag Plan, is an online platform where if you kind of don't know how to get started and need a template and don't want to look at a blank page, if you make a free account there at Ag Plan, you can kind of fill in all the pieces of the puzzle we're going to start requiring from you as part of your worksheets and homework for this class. Two things then, you can keep that as a running thing that you fill in as you have the time, or we give you homework. Two, you can keep updating it. And three, you can actually make us reviewers. You can keep it very private for yourself as your own account. But you also could assign any of us who teach this class or do an office hours the ability to look at it and give you feedback on it. So it's a really easy way for us to share information with you as well, and for you to continue to be part of our community. So why do we spend so much time on planning? Well, the sobering statistic is not just farms, over 70% of new businesses fail in the first year. And if you go back and use Small Business Administration data, it's usually due to a lack of inadequate planning, not thinking through all the details in the chess game that is starting a business, undercapitalization, which we can't totally conquer, but we have a lot of our lending partners who we are allowed to give a very warm handoff of you being better prepared to go and ask for funding once you've been through programs like this. And then lacking needed management skills as part of their team. Well, some of you have reliable dogs, and that's a great start. But also, sometimes your team can be enhanced, not from actually going and hiring people and having more owners, but even just being networked to the right set of people, which we tend to be pretty good at. So we asked our past participants when we did a survey of those almost 500 people, how they use this program. And what you see is the shorter orange bars are what they were doing before the program. And what we're very happy about is the green bars show that after they took this 8-week program, how much farther along they were in developing that plan, knowing who their networks were, and understanding the risk and opportunities. So we stand pretty confident that this is not going to be the solution for every challenge you face, but is a really important step in that. So the three things I'm going to focus on in the strategic positioning is to just make you start thinking more intentionally and thoughtfully about some things about your farm. First, I'm going to talk about driving and shaping your future, thinking about actually what is realistic for you to basically maybe after this course have as goals to get done in the next year, with some real intentionality about either an opportunity or challenge that helps address. Make you think outside the box a little bit. Sure, you need to be looking inward at your farm, but very much going to try to push you guys with SWOT analysis to also think of the environment you're working in, because that's pretty important for profitability and risk. And then a little bit on positioning. I can go a lot farther in this in my semester-long class, but again, thinking of yourselves not with knowing what you can do and what you're facing, what's the best position for you to be in with your farm. So really this becomes almost a funneling exercise. We let you start with this very big vision of what you want to do, and then funnel that into, well, to be able to do that, what are some things I have to do this year or this month? And then we're going to go so far as then to try to get you to put that eloquently down on a piece of paper as a mission statement, which is just a fancy way of saying the elevator pitch for your farm. So one thing we say when we start thinking about that vision, so we're going to start at the big pipeline of the funnel, is you need to understand the values you're going in for. So one thing that's really important here is we're happy to see this, a couple of you are in here as groups of farmers for the same farm, because what we know is really important is that everyone affiliated with the farm who has any ownership or management role really does have to get on the same page about what their values are, because if you're all going in different directions, it's really almost tumultuous. So these are not so specific as goals, but they're just really about things you stand for. And sometimes that's community, sometimes that's family, sometimes that's food sovereignty, sometimes that's your passion for people having healthful foods and diets in your community. So this is where you get to think big, and we won't pick on you at all for probably don't want to go so far as to save the world, but we're even happy to say, like, I want a more food secure Delta County. It can be that big thinking. So that morphs then into mission and vision statements. And so the vision can be very big, and you might not even mention your farm name. A mission statement starts funneling that into, so how does your business do that? So you start off with what kind of organization, farm, ranch, food business. Maybe what it legally is it a family farm? Is it a corporation? Is it a cooperative? You should list your products and services. And we added services because a lot of you are planning to grow things, animals and or plants, but we're realizing an increasing number of farms have a nonprofit service element to them of education, community building, workforce development. So try to, in a succinct way, put everything you think you're creating for value for your community and economy. And then where your values come in is kind of the needs you fill. And that's where you make somewhere in your mission statement something inspirational. Like, what's the difference you're going to make for your family, for your farm, for your community, for your food shed? And that usually they're, particularly for small farms, that has almost a people or humanistic element to it. And we'll return to that a little bit. So mission statement is something we have as a goal. All of you should have by the time you present your business plans, and they tend to need a little refining. So we're going to actually hope that you get them done early, get feedback on them, and refine them. Then we're going to start even funneling more directly into, okay, so if that's your mission, what are some goals you have to take on to actually make that mission even possible? And the acronym we use here is DRIVE, that those goals have to be directional, reasonable. This is where you can't be saying you're going to save the world for sure, but you can take a bite-sized chunk of feeding 5 families better. Inspiring, this is where we want the human element. Visible, you could imagine the person you're sharing that goal with, visualizing what that looks like. And eventual, you have to put a time frame on it, but it can be very broad, and it doesn't have to be this year. So some examples of those goals might be having the largest market share for, say, jerky in your local farmers market, maintaining a profitable operations, always a good one. Be considered the top farmer in your county. Sometimes there's yield things. Sometimes you might go compete in county fair with bringing the best cheese or something. Creating employment for family members, that's fine. That's a great goal that you actually want to keep a family member back at the farm. Being on the cutting edge of technology. Someone wants to own a Japanese truck. We want to give them an opportunity to own a Japanese truck. Maybe it's fuel efficient. Maybe it's right size for your operation. Be able to service loans on time. That's a great one for getting capital. And then maybe it's obtaining a leadership position among peers. We have so many great food organizations across the state. So one data point I wanted to share, this table can be kind of busy, is what we want to say, because we think this is your orientation, is the USDA tracks the survival of farms year to year. Again, this is kind of dated data, but particularly for the smallest farms that are the least capitalized that you see at the top of this table, we have evidence that those who are in direct markets, making sales directly and human connections directly, are more likely to survive than those who don't. So for a lot of you who've chosen this pathway that this course will focus on a lot with markets, is when you can't be big, sometimes it's best to be direct. And so you'll hear that theme throughout this a lot. If you don't do that model, that's great too. It's just, we'll have to talk about a different context of how you're going to be competitive. So with long-term goals, we had DRIVE. With these short-term objectives, we have SMART. So this is where you get really in the weeds on things you might be doing next month. So you want to be very specific. I am going to register with the state of Colorado with a business name. It's very specific, right? It's measurable. You can measure it by saying, I have an email from the Secretary of State that I own this business name now. It's attainable within your current economic and physical capabilities. So this is where we might be the most critiquey in this class. When we start seeing those business plans, sometimes we'll push back, not because we're smarter than you, but when we have seen 500 farms and have known the trajectory of those farms over the last 20 years, we have a really good ability to truth what is possible to do, grow, raise, increase for markets in a year, because we've just seen so many patterns play out with so many farmers. It should be rewarding. This class is mostly going to focus, because I'm an economist, on making sure you're profitable and not taking on any risk you don't need to. It is okay, though, to have some goals that are more humanistic. If the goal is about rewarding, or if you want to have a philanthropic or educational element to your operation, go for it. But a lot of our examples are going to focus on making sure you're profitable as well. And then finally, these really do have to be timed, and we don't want to see anything in your business plan for an objective that will take longer than this growing season, or if you're in the livestock market, this cycle. So it's just the specificity of these shows up with these examples. So achieve a 5% annual growth in sales. That's very specific. I was wrong here. I should have put this year. I should have put a time to it. That could have been next week. It could have been next month. I should have said this year. To achieve a 12 to 15% return on equity within 4 years. That I put a timeline. To reduce your fixed expenses by 7% within 3 years. If we get you hooked up with the right lenders, we might be able to do that for the credit you get access to. It could also be production oriented, achieving 98% germination rates if you're like going to start your seedlings in a greenhouse, for instance, or securing 95% of your customers come back next season, whether that's someone you can track really specifically because they're a CSA member, or if it's someone you just track because in your Square account at farmers markets, you know they're coming back. So to give you more examples, and I'm going to mention this, localfoodeconomics.com has some fact sheets where if you want to know what are realistic numbers for some of those goals, what they are for this type of farm. I'm going to stop because I see the chat box at 9, and I'm guessing there's either been questions or clarifications, and this is a good place to stop. And you want to share with me verbally, Martha or Nicole, or is it stuff I can handle later while there's a talking?
Yeah, I was gonna say there aren't burning questions right now, just
Great.
like admins.
Just people chatting and getting to it. Great.
Yep.
So again, the good news is all of these are going to show up again in a worksheet, so you don't have to really memorize this. And these are all text boxes you can fill in an ag plan if you decide to start taking these on, where they'll even give you some of these same examples because they have a lot of plans built there too. So let me give you some examples of mission statements, and let's talk about them a bit because that's one of the first assignments we're going to give you. This is actually one a student did in one of my classes for a hypothetical ranch. It was nothing. You notice they even made themselves a logo. I thought was pretty clever. If any of you are artistic, you can make me a logo too. But I'll read it quick, but think about the words here. For the last century, the Luthen farm has established deep roots in the ag industry and has developed a reputation for producing high quality Angus crossbred beef. Our family operation incorporates quality genetics to produce high grading, great yielding calves, which will gain weight quickly to harvest. We perform superior animal husbandry practices to ensure a healthy, high quality product that our customers in the cattle industry can trust. Liked a lot about this mission statement. This one I'm going to give you my critique, and then the next one I'm going to see if you guys want to weigh in. He was a great student, but it assumes everybody geeks out on animal genetics like some of us do. It's not quite as customer facing as we would tend to want. You don't even know where this is. I know it's in Routt County, Colorado, because of the student, but definitely should at least have where the location is, particularly if it's trying to be customer focused. And then what I would say is you can keep some of that pride in your genetics, but it just went a little too far down that path and didn't think it did get to the customers by the very end statement. But it even called the customers the customer in the cattle feeding industry, partly because they were selling some of their calves to other farms. So there's nothing wrong with this, but I would say if someone brought this to me as a first draft, I'd be like, great. But what I'd say is at bare minimum, we usually want locations to show up in this. And then we want them a little more community/customer focused in general for the ones we see in this class. So the next one I'll let you read yourself. This one I pulled a new one from a nonprofit. And why I pulled it as an example is they combined a mission and vision statement. Notice it's a lot shorter. And they combine them so they could have that big thinking vision at the bottom for how they want to see the world change. By the top, they get a little more specific about their specific mission. So this one's a little quicker for y'all to read. But I love if anyone is brave enough to like come off mic and give me any feedback they have or anything they would add or change. But also, I just wanted to give you an example of one where it isn't all about profits in the business, it can be about the community. Anyone have any feedback?
I have a reaction to using buzzwords like resilience instead of telling me what is meant. Like, how are you supporting the farmers? Please tell me.
Yep. Well, particularly because it's so short. I think they were trying to keep it super short. But like, what's an example? I know this group, so but given even what you read in the other parts of this, what would be your guess they mean by resilience? Does anyone have a guess?
They're buying food from farmers.
Well, they're going one step further. Sometimes farmers will find themselves leaving stuff in the field because they're short on hands. And so they're actually recruiting and managing harvest crews who go in and actually take stuff that was otherwise going to be left or composted or put under and getting it to specifically food banks or food access points. So the fact that you couldn't grab that from here mean, that there needs to be a tiny bit. So that's what we're challenging you to is be succinct. But if being succinct leaves people having to guess exactly what you were just having to guess, Molly, it's worth adding another sentence, particularly if you stack it like this, and we'll give you permission for this. You can stack it. You can have a very short and sweet one. Sometimes people even do a tagline like Nike's Just Do It. And you can keep stacking it with versions of it that have more richness. So maybe there's a short one like this, that's the spiel that you memorize and you can say off the top of your head. But for your website where people have a longer time to peruse it, you can fill it out with a longer set of maybe 4 sentences. So that's the other option we'll give you in the class. And that's why I showed you 2 very different examples. But thanks, Molly, for being, Molly's the first brave one to speak up in our class. We'll find some way to give her a present for that. So thank you very much. And that again is just 2 examples, but we can give you bazillions of them. If you go to almost any good website, a mission statement will be there. So you might want to find a farm you emulate and want to be like, and go look at what they say. So now we're switching gears to the next session of class, which certainly relates to goals. And specifically, sometimes people get stuck as like, I don't know where to start on goals. Well, if you get stuck on that, usually if you go to a business school strategic planning class, they'll have you do a SWOT analysis, which is simply an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And how you subdivide them in your head is that strengths and weaknesses are very internally focused. What's going on in your farm or ranch or family business, and opportunities and threats are very externally focused. They're things you don't control, but the more smartly you can react to them, the better you tend to do. So those internal things, we'll go over some other examples, but that's like, what talent you have, what resources you have, what land you have, what water you have. The external things generally get lumped into one of 3 things. Who are your competitors? And we have to think broadly about that, and I'll revisit that, both today and in marketing. Who are your customers and what are they looking for from your farm or business? And then what are the market conditions? And again, none of those 3 things you have any control over, except for, I guess, you could move to a place who has a customer base that's more aligned with your values. And that's why we bring up why Colorado is so special. We do tend to have a higher buying public from local farms than the national average, particularly in the Intermountain West. So that's the only place you really have control of your customers is you actually could situate your business so that you're near people with like values. But otherwise, most of these things are things you don't control, but you can react to them very smartly. So again, when you're thinking about how to make goals in line with this, mostly people get focused on identifying, protecting, and deploying resources. That's just a fancy way of saying, I want to build my soil's fertility. I want to increase the marketing skill of my employees that go to farmers market. It's about managing your assets, whether those are hard assets like land and animals, or if it's soft assets like the skills of your team. But you also have to understand your capabilities. So this is where your networks, your education, your expertise, your social capital, and communities come in handy. Those things that are really nuanced and you can't list as specifically as bullets, but that you know about yourself. And the more you can bring those to life, both in your mission statement and your goals, the better. And then the hardest one for people to get their heads around is developing core competencies. That's where you have to not only know what's going on with yourself, but know why that's going to make you competitive. And that's where we can be a real asset, because we can help you think about how we've seen other people effectively do that. So those opportunities and threats, again, are those things where you need to understand what's going on. So we're even going to share throughout the course things we know to be true. Again, some of this data is dated because the new census isn't out. It's coming out in February. So we're hoping one of these classes we can share what we've learned about what's changing. But right now we know we're at least probably a $10 billion industry, people focused on local sales. Again, if you look at the map, the darker the color, the higher the share of local food sales as a share of total ag sales. Again, you see a lot of color in Colorado. We know this is a marketplace that tends to do better for people in direct markets. And by better, I mean has more sales opportunities for you all to come in and fill, because our customers are looking for that. We have, though, also seen an increasing share of those sales be not in the traditional CSAs and farmers markets, but through intermediated markets, whether that's a food hub, which we have a healthy set of in our state, going to restaurants yourselves, going and applying for a farm to school bid. So where you're not interacting with the customer as fully, but your farm business name and where you're from still matters to the person buying, because that's part of the value proposition. So there's about 170,000 of you guys doing this across the country. You're not alone. That's about 10% of all farmers in numbers. So it's about 10% of farmers and about 5% of sales, we think. So that was our first way of telling you, you can list that as one of your opportunities, that you live in a state that's well suited to the business model you're trying to tackle. And then we can get you county level data if that helps you to be more specific, because it's available now, but more current will be available within a month from now. Bigger way to think about this, I just presented you for Colorado, is that the big things usually we watch as businesses are globalization and markets and resources. COVID really changed that. There are people who don't want their markets as globalized anymore because I'll use the word Molly doesn't like, they weren't resilient. They could not pivot quickly. Local markets pivoted way more quickly in COVID. And it's opened a lot of people's eyes to, we're never going to have trade go away. We want our avocados, we want our coffee, but we're going to have a portfolio that looks at trying to make sure there's local sources for things, for at least a portion of what is needed going forward, and that we're hearing that consistently. Part of that is also consumers evolving preferences. Consumers are going into stores and asking for local versions of a lot more products than they were doing when we started this class. So consumers are evolving in a way that's beneficial to almost all the business models I'm guessing you guys are going to share with us. But on the flip side of this, it's a more demanding food industry. So even though you have more opportunities to go into the market, navigating markets is the most complex thing since I started this, partly because of regulations related to food safety, partly because of the expectations. If you are going to work with a restaurant or a school or a retailer, they have for the business skills and acumen you have to navigate their business support services. And partly that's the store's choices. Partly it's the government's choices to continue to make the regulatory environment what they hope is meant to be safe and secure. But as we all know, that backfires sometimes and leads to a lot of paperwork no one has the bandwidth to really handle. We're going to try to help you have partners that can help you handle that better, but it's a reality. And then finally, the pivotal role of technology, which people are like, oh, that's for big farms. It's not for big farms. We're seeing the adoption of Square now has made it a total game changer for all of you thinking about how you want to track your markets and your customers and communicate with them. So, and that's very cost effective for even the smallest of our producers. So those are the 5 things. If you're challenging yourself and you can't think of some goals, think of these 5 things, and I'm sure one of them at least will fit. One we also have had really wanted people to track, because COVID accelerated it, is the move to online food. And again, we think of the biggies like Safeway delivers, almost all the stores have a cart program, but we saw a phenomenal number of local food farms and food businesses move into online channels as well, really invest in getting their website and their protocols up to do that. And we have done this national study. So this is not just Colorado. We've done this national study where we had customers tell us they're buying even from local markets in an increasing amount after COVID through online sources. So not every farm has to do that, but if you're in a more remote area and with a higher value product that can ship easily, we'd highly recommend it's something you want to explore to grow your market beyond what you can travel to in your locale. So not going to totally cover this, but I want to introduce it to you. When you're thinking about what threats and opportunities you face, and this one focuses a little bit more on threats, a lot of people get ramped up in thinking in their very, very closest marketplace. Oh, someone else is doing that in my farmer's market or my county already. Really what the local food system faces is a little bit of that type of competition, but you really want to be thinking instead about substitutes. And in substitutes here, I mean the broadest terms of you're really competing with the grocery stores. It may actually help you to have more producers at the farmer's market with you, because when it becomes a critical mass of people who have the products they want at a market, a higher share of people come to that market than go to the grocery store. The grocery store is the real competition. You actually want more people in your market, even if they're selling the same things, because the bigger and healthier and thriving that market looks, the higher share of people who visit it on a regular basis, because they know they can get a bigger share of their total food purchases. And this is where online comes in really handy too. Think of online this way. No one really wants to go to the big grocery stores. They're huge, they're busy, parking lots are awful. Now, if they can order all the stuff you can get anywhere, their Heinz ketchup and their toilet paper delivered to their houses, where they're now wanting to go shop is the places that are funner to shop with samples and interaction and socialness. So we think we're getting some people coming to direct markets because they don't have to go to the big stores as much anymore, because those guys deliver their non-perishables, the stuff they don't care as much about getting locally. So lots of ways to think about online as a new way for you to think about your marketplace. Let's even think bigger trends. This just got put out by a couple of research groups out there. So on the left side is basically what they call the 4 big drivers right now in markets. Modern beverage culture I put there. Probably not many of you doing beverages, although we've had a lot of people who do kombuchas and ciders and stuff go through here. The Great Wellness Reset is really interesting because it isn't just about vitamins, and people actually want their nutrients in food again. They want clean labels and they want their nutrients in food. They do not want to take supplements. So this Great Wellness Reset could be where a lot of you dig in. The new generations, Z and Alpha, there's now an Alpha. I didn't know that until I read this report. They are buying and eating in a completely different pattern than anything in the generation at least I came from. And they're not going to be about meals anymore. They're about snacking, they're about on the go, they're about treats. They just are going to eat and buy in very different ways. Some of you might choose to target them. And then finally, personalized sustainability. This comes back to understanding finding ways to quickly figure out what your customers who are coming up to your market value as sustainability. It might be 100 different things, and knowing how you give the elevator speech for your farm or food business about how it matches theirs. On the right-hand side, it's a little bigger way to think about it. It's that people are looking for the humanness and relationships in markets now. So the left-hand side is a little more about buying in markets. The right-hand side is about why we think local and direct markets are doing well, is because people want humanness back in their markets. Not for everything. Again, I don't think people care at all where their toilet paper comes from. Some are getting into that. They want more sustainable, blah, blah, blah. But for food particularly, they bringing humanness, bringing relationships, social capital, your version of green, and sharing with them your sustainability value story. These are things that are very much connecting with customers, and we're pretty sure they're what are driving local markets right now. So those are from 2 big research groups that are far bigger than the CSU team. Let me share some stuff we've done, though, in the CSU team that gets a little more into the nitty-gritty. And the first on the top right is kind of some sobering news again, that as you would guess, red light, yellow light, green light is just like the game. You don't want a lot of red light in your farms. You want green lights. But as you see, smaller farms, which we go from left to right, retirement and off-farm occupations are basically those hobby farmers. Maybe some of you are those. They are less worried about being profitable because they probably have something else supporting their farm. But once we get to low sales and start going right, there's a large set of farms and very dangerous profitability zones. The goal of our course is to get more of you into yellow, if not green, than red. But the reality is the last time we measured it in ag, it is very hard to be a small farm and be profitable. So I direct you now to the bottom right of, then we go and look at the ones that are profitable. And what we see happening is that they are finding ways to get lots and lots and lots of sales per acre. We don't have a lot of these folks with a lot of acres. The very big folks on the over $1 million in sales to the right have a lot of acres. But you'll see one of the ways we have seen people going through this course really counteract that trend in the top right, which is bad news, is we see people do phenomenal intensive management of small amounts of land, herds, water, greenhouses. And so it's really going to be about trying to figure out how to maximize gross sales per acre, or if, for some of you, that might be square foot. We've had farms that size. So there are ways to counteract that. We just want to be realistic with you that we can't make the big mega trend of being big is generally more profitable go away. What we're here to do is show you the pathways to be small to start and grow into that. As another way
Hey,
to think
Dawn.
about the, yeah, go ahead.
On the previous slide, someone wanted to know which color is beginning and which is established.
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I should have said that. Yeah. Where'd my legend go? Yeah, so the beginning farmers are actually the orange and the established are green. And that shouldn't surprise you because far more of the established farms are both have capital, they're maybe a legacy farm of 100 years, and they have higher sales. So they don't have the pressure to make quite as much per acre. Whereas the beginning, if they're doing it and they're profitable, they're having to make a lot of that. They're having to take the assets they do have because they're not as capitalized and aggressively use them to make as many sales as possible per acre. Sorry, I didn't have that in the key. My mistake. Good question. That means people are paying attention. I like that. Even if you're eating dinner, you can pay attention. That's great. So let's think of this a little more nuanced. Again, this is cray-cray, so let me walk you through this. This is the biggest graphic I'll put up for the night. So on the top axis up there, a lot of times people get caught on that right-hand side of thinking you only can have physical and financial capital. You need money and you need land. Those are super helpful. Those are super, super helpful, but we can't make them appear sometimes. So we're going to challenge you to think on the left-hand side of also the human, social, and cultural capital you bring to your businesses, particularly for some of you who are looking at services as much as products. Then on the other axis, we have how certain or uncertain conditions are. And this is going to be a weird stretch for me, but I'm going to say you guys are in a position where uncertain markets might even benefit you, because when things change quickly, big farms and businesses can't pivot quickly. You all can. You can pivot within a couple weeks sometimes. We've had farms do that. So the way I made this topology, this is my own little design, as you can see from the very inferior graphics to it. So up in the right hand or the left top, we have customer-focused startup firms. They're all about understanding their customers almost to an intimate level, like knowing almost all their customers who stop at their booth by name, their favorite recipes, what cultivars they like. And when those meet new people who could be their customers, and those customers asking them for a product they don't have their booth that week, figuring out if they can have that at their booth sometime yet that production season. That's how focused you guys can be on your customers and the uncertain conditions of people wanting new things and asking about what they don't see available that they want to buy. So you guys are, most of you, I assume, are in that position. Then we've seen people who've gone through this program and are 10, 15, 20 years out, some of which are speaking tonight, go one of two directions. You can stay very focused on that human, social, cultural capital of your community, very close to home. Mo Better Greens down in Denver is a great idea. And we call those craft food enterprises. They get a little more certain with their market conditions because they now have had those same customers for 5 or 10 years. And even though they want to be responsive to new customers, they have their stable of folks. So we've seen a lot of them go that direction and not have to get terribly bigger. They're working on basically the same land base they started with. Another direction you all can choose to go is a regional artisanal brand. Ela Family Farms is a great example where you do grow, you get profitable enough, you can acquire or lease more land, and you can grow into a bigger business. Doesn't mean you totally give up the human, social, cultural aspect. They have great relationships with their customers, but there are still people who have bought an Ela apple who've never met Steve Ela now. Whereas almost everyone on the left-hand side, if they've had that farm's food, they've met that farmer. Steve has grown to the point now that he doesn't have to be at every single market, although he's at a lot of them. And then, of course, who we're competing against is those mature product lines like Dole, who are out there and ubiquitous. You can find them everywhere. They can't, but they're so big they can't pivot. So if someone wants a new product, they're not going to have Asian salad mix in their bags anytime soon. But all it would take for some of you to hear a customer really seeking that at a restaurant or something, and perhaps in your succession planning could have it 6 to 8 weeks from now and available for a customer. Dole can't do that, you can. So this is where I kind of stop for the night and give you the challenge of, we're hoping we're setting up a dialogue both between what I've presented and what you're going to hear from these great farmers who come after me, to start writing some thoughts down about what are you doing here? Why did you sign up for this course? Where can we help you get? And the more you can share that succinctly, eloquently, fully, we're going to be able to get you the right networks, right advisors, right advice, right data. So that's where you're getting some of these. I've got to check with Martha about, at what pace we're giving you these worksheets, but you're going to start seeing worksheets, which you can't tell us you don't know where to start now, because in my very rapid pace talking I just did, I should have given you stuff to trigger you thinking about that. But wherever possible in the worksheets, we use some similar acronyms and language to try to remind you, oh yeah, I remember what Dawn talked about there. And obviously this is a recorded presentation and you can go back and watch again and look for some of the, you'll see I'll also give you resources. So one is this ag plan. You go to ag plan and make an account. It won't be the exact same examples I gave tonight, and they haven't done some of that research we've done about Colorado, but every place they have you fill in something in that ag plan, they have a box where they allow you to look at examples. So you'll see when you go to make that plan, you can choose what you want to be, but we would recommend most of you, the plan template is going to work the best if you're the ag value added, because it has far more detail about and different types of guidance and examples for markets than commodity, which we don't think most of you are probably planning to do. But this is an example of, it still is kind of a blank slate because you start filling in a box, but it saves it. But you'll see in those boxes down below, what it'll do is, just like we did in the slides tonight, it'll give you, the samples will be examples like the mission statements I showed. The resources will be other places, websites, readings you can go do if you're still stuck. And so you don't have to use this resource. It's just another place. If that, everyone learns and processes different, and this is another example. But this is like an example of what they give you as an example. So again, if you're the type of person who needs to see a lot of examples to get unstuck, they have them. So I made it in time, Martha, which I don't always do. And I know I covered a lot. I'm not going anywhere tonight, but you're going to find I did the best I could, but it's so much more interesting when you hear about this from farms and how they're doing it. And so I'm sticking around. I'll be part of your small groups. I'll be around this spring, but I hope I at least inspired you all that what we're trying to have you do will make a difference and will help you start putting the goal and dream you have to have a farm into the perspective of how that fits into the marketplace, because that's part of our goal with the class. Any questions before we move
Well,
to
no,
the
let's
next part of the agenda?
definitely pause for questions, for sure. Questions for Dawn.
Anyone regretting taking the class? This is where you don't nod. Okay. So I don't need questions, and so I'm sticking around. I'll be in some small groups, and then if you have questions you want, when I'm going offline and not talking, if you have questions or if there's a particular data point or market trend you want to challenge me to like share a link to for you, go for it in the chat box and I'll find it because it's a little easier way to share it that way instead of by word anyway. But please pay attention to the speakers while they're speaking. But if there's things you want me to fill in where I was saying things kind of big and bold, like, and this is happening and this is happening, and want me to substantiate it with data, I love finding me some data. So thank you for listening so intently. And we are so excited to have this big of a class, you guys, you don't know.
So here, I just wanted to mention, there is a question in the chat, but before we get to that, and Dawn, you can take a look there in the chat. But I just want to mention AgPlan is a great interface. It's free. You can sign up and you can start putting notes in there. If you want to share it with us, you can share it with any of us and we can go in and make comments. I mean, it's not perfect, but it gives you a way to start developing something that won't go away. You can share it with a lender, a family member, whatever, but it's just, it's a useful tool as you're starting to build your business plan. So not required or anything, but just something we find gives us a chance to, provide feedback. So Dawn, did you want to address the value added examples?
Yeah, and thanks, Martha. I've got to go and take a more recent screenshot. There is an agritourism business plan now. So the value added examples I have gotten vast. To be legalistic now, the USDA, which actually just put out their value added grants for this year, now says if you're just selling locally, that is value added. I think they basically infer you have to have such a higher touch of customer interaction. That's value added. We would say more specifically value added is some realm of processing. So someone already put pickles and jellies. For meat, it's just meat because you have to have it processed unless you're going to sell quarters and halves and stuff, which people do. But even further than if you think about doing your own sausage line or jerky line or the pemmican like the Epic bars are. And then I think you can think kind of more creatively too. Like some people will literally just take, you've probably seen it in the store from Osage Gardens. They'll take and just actually put several different herbs together that make an interesting basting brush for a barbecue. And they'll call that value added just because they put together some things that someone not as well versed in culinary doesn't know is something you would put together for a recipe or so forth. So there's a pretty broad definition now. And it's one of the places you guys, again, can be super creative. Like one of the examples I can think of from a past is we've had a cheese company go through and someone asked them, because it was a goat cheese, but how goat cheese almost kind of feels like a cream cheese. They asked if they had a salmon one, and literally 2 weeks later, all of a sudden there was salmon and this goat cheese. I mean, so it can even just be how you combine your boxes if you're doing a CSA. But we're pretty broad about it. But on average, when I say that and throw it out, it's usually because you're doing some level of processing, but that processing can also be we'll talk about this in risk management, but you also could think about being an aggregator where like we're increasingly seeing some producers sell on each other's behalf, like they're selling a CSA share, but then they offer to sell someone else's bread as part of their share. That's really even value added because you're playing a broker role and you're almost like a third party certifier of quality to the people buying because they know if they already like your product, they would trust anyone you would choose to sell through yours. So we'll think very broadly in this class about value added. Great question. Yes, pickles and jellies are always not bad. We wish there were more pickles in our market, in fact. So anyone who wants to take on making more pickles available would make me very happy.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. Did we
Yeah.
stay on time, Martha?
We did. We're doing great. So we are going to take just a 10-minute break for everybody to get up. In the meantime, I'll pause the recording. Nicole's going to pop a prompt in the chat and you guys can take a look at that. And then we'll be back at 7:20 to hear from Michael and from Ariane. So thanks, you guys. Recording again. Okay, so now you know. And then we're gonna start hearing from Michael. He sent ahead a video, and so he's putting his son to bed. So as soon as he's finished doing that, apparently his son gets grumpier than I do when he doesn't get enough sleep. So when he's finished doing that, he's going to join us for the Q&A part, but he sent ahead a video. So I want to share that with you guys. So give me just a minute here. Okay. And then. Okay. Oops, wrong one. Okay. All right, and tell me if you have any issues hearing this.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael with Kilt Farm. Thank you so much for letting me pre-record this. About the time you're watching it, I'll be putting my 3-year-old to bed. So I will be back around in a few minutes for question and answers. So thank you. I'm really glad to be here tonight. In all honesty, I've taken that program that you're in, Building Farmers, probably 4 times as I've refined my vision for Kilt Farm and really developed a business plan. A little bit about Kilt Farm. We're an organic specialty vegetable operation. Last year, we managed 80 acres, cultivated about 12 acres of ground, had a 356 member CSA, also sold food to grocery stores, small markets, other farms, nonprofits, other CSAs. And, you know, it's been a long road. When I took my first Building Farmers program, I had a grand vision, right? I had an aha moment that really made me decide that I wanted to do something about the food system. I felt it was broken. I was living up in Steamboat, had the opportunity to work in Southern California in the Santa Barbara area for 9 months. And my God, the food was amazing. You know, there was a farmer's market every day of the week. It was incredible. Then I moved back to Steamboat Springs and I realized, wow, the food here is just atrocious. So I was sitting on a ski lift at the chairlift at the end of the ski season, and it really dawned on me that after the tourists leave, the food gets even worse. And so I decided I wanted to do something about it. And I started a little business in 2008 to help distribute food from the Front Range and the Western Slope up into the mountains from Summit County to Aspen and Winter Park to Steamboat Springs. And, you know, that was really good. I was doing something, but I was really drawn to the magic in the field. And so by 2011, I was back in Boulder, been in Colorado since 93. And I decided I really wanted to pursue farming. I was working for a local nonprofit focused on local food access and took the Building Farmers program. And I came into this first class that you're in right now with a big vision. Oh my God, it was huge. And I sat down and, you know, in the next exercise you're going to do, I spilled the beans. And all these guys that really look like farmers looked at me and like, you can't do that. And I was a little defeated, kind of finished the program, but didn't develop a business plan. And it really had me thinking, okay, what can I do? This is my end vision, but what do I need to do now? What's the most important thing for me? And it was really learning how to grow food and grow food in such a way that it really falls in line with my vision and mission. So it was really getting those dialed in. And for me, it became clear that, you know, my mission is to grow the healthiest food possible while impacting my community in such a way that my community and my soil is better when I'm done. So for me, having healthy food is based on having healthy soil. And having healthy community means that, you know, my farm really is a give and take. I'm not extracting from the community. I'm providing for the community. I'm receiving money from the community. I'm hiring people. Money's going back out in the community, really trying to make a circular economy out of my farm. Well, once I really refined that over 4 years of taking this program, I found a half-acre plot of land and started Kilt Farm in 2013 as part of a farmer training program. The goal of that program was to get farmers to go out on open space. I was the only graduate, and I went out and I now farm all open space. And so I found a half-acre private land. I was able to get a sublease on 7.5 acres of county land and really started to put in place my vision and develop my business to really achieve the goal of moving the food system. So for me, it was important to scale because I felt that I didn't want to be a backyard farmer, trying to grow $100,000 worth of vegetables in a bunch of raised beds. It's great, but it doesn't move the food system. So, my goal was to scale, and I built my business plan around that. So I took on additional parcels of open space, took me up to about 40 acres. And then 2 years ago, I took on another 40 acres of land, once again, cultivating about 12 acres of ground. And this past year, we had 356 CSA members putting about 270 CSA boxes out over a 20-week season. And last year was really hard, right? I'd taken on a lot of debt because I wanted to scale my farm. And last year I had everything. I had the land, I had the equipment, I had the plan, but then I didn't have the people. And then the weather hit. And 20 inches of rain, multiple hailstorms were really devastating. But through it all, I kept going back to, keep in mind what my values are. And it's creating health through healthy food, trying to have the best soil possible, having an impact on my community, because there were a lot of hard decisions that I had to make. And they were based off, my passion, my desire, but they also were based off my plan. And so for me, the most important thing I could do last year was to finish the season, get over the finish line, fulfill my commitments to my members, fulfill my commitments to my partners and my employees. And it's really hard to know what's going to happen from year to year. But, when I have my business plan that I can refer to, basically where I want to go, my roadmap, what I want to do, what's most important to me, I can really make those decisions better informed. And, for me, in agriculture and vegetables especially, when you have a plan at the beginning of the season, I'm going to grow enough food for $700,000 in sales, which was my goal. I was going to grow on 8 acres to 10 acres, have cover crop in other acreage, expand the CSA and expand my wholesale footprint. A lot of expansion last year. And when things started to fall apart, I could realize, well, what do I need to do to be able to finish and fulfill my vision? So being able to refer to my business plan and more importantly for me, my values really helped me make a decision on where I need to go. Now, in 24, I'm kind of reassessing. I've just gone through the process of what happened last year. And today I finalized my numbers and we lost about $95,000, which is pretty devastating. And I'm trying to figure out, can I farm this year? But as I'm looking through that, I'm really trying to address, all the metrics that are important to me. Yes, profit and loss is an important metric and that'll dictate sustainability of the farm, but some of them are softer, like how are my relationships? Am I nice to be around? Is it fun? How's my health? How's the health of my relationships? It can't all be about growth. It can't all be about profit. Quality of life is pretty important. Last year, my quality of life was really poor. It impacted my family. It impacted my relationship with my wife. And really, it impacted my relationship with my friends and myself. I wasn't really nice to be around because I was under so much pressure. And the farming was so hard. So now as I'm really breaking it apart and looking about, okay, well, can I farm? Is it financially feasible? Looking at the metrics and what I've done and where I'm going. But what's important to me and really looking at the softer metrics will help. in this process. And I set myself up to grow the farm, and that was really important for me, being able to scale the farm up so I could have an impact. And even though last year was really hard, we put out 265 CSA shares every week. And I saw that I had the equipment, right? That I have the plans, I have the ground, I have the experience, I have the plan. So, while last year was really hard against the goals that I've set for myself, when I'm feeling strong and in a good place, I could say I really achieved a lot of goals last year. And at the same time, I had to make a lot of decisions and pivots based on the knowledge that I had and my mission and vision. So one of the pivots that I made was I stopped selling wholesale so I could focus on my CSA customers. That was a hard decision to make. That's one that cost me a lot of money, but the CSA members had entrusted in me their CSA payments, and I wanted to hold them and that commitment I made to them really dear. And so, when I think about my business plan and my values, it helps me make those decisions. Because honestly, when you start a farming season, especially in vegetables, your trajectories really get set early. And you can make some pivots like, okay, I'm not going to plant that area. I'll plant this area. I'm not going to put these plants in the ground. I actually have to compost them. I'm going to sell to these people, not these people. Having a real good sense of where you're going and what's important to you helps. And, in a crisis, having a really set trajectory and an understanding of what's important to you helps in making those decisions. So, like I said, it was a very hard year last year, and I am wanting to really break apart my business and step back and kind of go through a very rapid prototyping of what my business needs to be to succeed. And so as I'm moving through this, SWOT analysis comes up for me, and even last year I was doing this on the fly. What are my strengths right now? What are my weaknesses right now? And last year was labor and weather. Oh my God. What are the opportunities? What are the threats? And really figuring out sometimes on the fly in just this matter of minutes where I need to go. But now I'm going to break it apart and check again, what's important to me and where I can move my business and in what form. Because I've already released some property, I've already sold some equipment to try to allow me to farm again. But I need to create a farming opportunity that is also, increases that metric of quality of life and, my happiness and joy, while also hitting profitability and, my value metrics of impacting my community. So, as I've gone through the business planning process and I've gone through my personal growth process, I try to step back and assess kind of where I'm at, personally, emotionally, with the business. And it all goes into how I move forward. Right now I'm really deep in the financials. I have to send my financials off to the Farm Service Agency. They're my main lender, because I made a decision long ago that I wanted to scale my farm, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to do that off of cash flow, that I needed to go in debt so I could have the equipment and the facilities that allow me to fulfill my vision of moving the food system in my small way. And so every year I've got to really fess up to Brian Cook over at the FSA in Adams County. Highly recommend him. And if you're thinking about doing this in a big way and having a big impact, that's not a bad thing because you're really creating something valuable with that money. But every year I have to look at my financials. Where did I do well? Where did I overspend or underspend? What revenue targets did I miss? And bringing it down to what was my cost per acre? Can I figure out what my cost per crop is and what my really cost of production is? Where was I strong? Where was I weak? And then taking all that information and helping me move forward so I can know where to go. And it's hard, it's what you are embarking on. And what I embarked on when I first started this program is really challenging. You have to come up with an idea. You have to validate that idea, prototype it, okay, here's an idea. Does it work? No. Does this next one work? Oh yeah, that one's better. And then really putting the numbers together to back up what you want to do. And, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And the great thing about in the business planning process is you can go through all that work and commit the time. And at the end be like, no, I'm not going to do this. It doesn't make sense. Right. And that's valuable. It's not a loss because you learned a lot. Now, when you get into business and you really go for it, and if your assumptions are incorrect, it's going to impact you along the entire lifespan of your business. So really getting your assumptions right, really going through the hard work of dreaming, and then trying to put those dreams to paper and attaching numbers to that, and really understanding what it is you want to do and what it is you're willing to impart to the business. Because, I've been married now for 7 years. I have a 3-year-old. My wife and I joke that the business is my mistress. And in many ways, it is a relationship that I have and that my wife has with the business. And when you look at it in those terms, it's really nice to know what you're getting into and know what you're willing to accept, and putting it down on paper and looking at it and being able to sell your spouse or sell your banker, that this is my vision. This makes sense. There's a need for it. I have the ability to do it. I'm going to learn a lot. Here's where I want to go and here's why. Having that business plan helps make it concrete for you before you have to go and put blood and sweat and tears, and there's lots of blood and sweat and tears, into the land, into your vision, into your business. So it is incredibly valuable. And honestly, it's real difficult to do this year to year. I'm a vegetable grower in Colorado. We have winter. I didn't know if it was going to come this year, but it came in 25 below at my farm. And we do have a time off, but the season really starts sometimes in February and maybe early March, ends October, November. This year for me, I let go of the employees, but I finished the work of the farm into December. There's not a whole lot of time after you reassess what happened and do all the financials and then start dreaming about the next year. And then you're starting to sell your CSAs and you're starting to really go and plan and order seeds to really step back and be like, whoa, is my model right? So spending the time now to really refine it and, test it and vision it and kind of give yourself the opportunity to say, no, this isn't the right version. What's the next version? What's that version? And then nail it down. Because once you're in it, and I've been in it year after year, I can make course corrections, but I'm making course corrections off of that vision of where I want to go that I set in motion 10 years ago. And this year is a little different. I'm stepping back a little bit more and I'm going to reassess because it was such a hard year. I need to make sure that I am good to go to farm. we need farmers in Colorado. There's a lot of threats ahead for agriculture in Colorado, from overtime regulations that have been enacted to Boulder's going to have a $25 an hour minimum wage by 2030. It's not going to be easy. That means that we really need to make sure we know where we're going and what we're doing. And the business planning process that you're in right now is going to bear fruit. And we need new farmers to come in and really help keep Colorado growing some of its own food. So thank you very much. I'm really excited to take your questions in a few minutes. Hopefully my son will be asleep. Once again, thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you all digitally. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike.
All right, there we go. So Michael will be joining us shortly. So I really appreciated what he put together there. That was really pretty powerful. And I think we will move on. Ariana, if you're ready to go.
Sure.
And then we'll do questions for both you and Michael afterward.
All right. Are you okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
Absolutely. Yep. And tell me if you want me to do it as
You
well.
know, you might do it. It's asking me a bunch of questions that I've not.
I didn't.
I feel like every time I log on to Zoom, I have some new issue where I don't have the most recent upgrade.
Sure. Here
Let
we
me
go.
try doing it one more time, and then if it doesn't
Oh,
work.
okay. And I'm ready if you are, Aria, if you want me to go ahead and share it from here.
Okay. It's wanting me to grant access, but I am, and it's not doing it. So why don't you go ahead and
Here it goes.
go ahead and
Okay.
share it.
And then just let me know when you want me to
When to go to the
change
next slide.
slides.
That sounds great. All right. So my name is Ariane Vanderweg, and I, along with my husband, Andrew, own two businesses. And I'll kind of talk about both of them because they're a little bit, well, not a little bit. They're involved with each other. So in order to understand the farm business, it's also important to understand our other business. But what I wanted to start with was the business plan that I put together through this course. I took it in 2020. And at the time, I did not have a farm property. It was kind of like a pipe dream of mine to do some farming. And 2020 happened to be a really good year for me to do that. I'll kind of explain that. But Martha had asked why or how the business plan was important in developing my farm. And I would say it is one of the very most important things that I found that I did in starting my farm. And the reason why is because I think somebody I saw mentioned in the comments that this course kind of gives you like that peer pressure to have to do and stay on top of all of those like boring, gross, officey things. And I guess as a little background for me, like I'm really an outdoors person, and probably my top favorite reason of why I started a farm is that I like digging in the dirt, and I like being outside, and that's really where I thrive. Not so much in the office and things like that. The problem is that you have to have both of those things to kind of create a business that makes sense and is kind of sustainable. And so I would say for anybody in this class who's doing this program, I would say the number one most important thing is to follow through with the business plan. And I know it's really hard, and a lot of us have like other jobs and family commitments and things like that, but it's super important. So if you want to go, Martha, to the next slide. All right, so kind of a quick overview. My husband and I own 2 businesses, Go West Farm, and then we also own Go West Camps, which is a day camp programs that we've owned here in the Colorado Springs area since well, I guess we're going into our 10th summer, and so those programs really are involved in each other quite a bit. Our farm overview is that we're a small scale vegetable, egg, and livestock farm. And we are, as opposed to Michael's kind of wholesale kind of model, we're more of that like market garden model. So we sell at markets. And then our other piece is that we do summer day camp and farm-based, or I guess our goal has been to do summer day camp and farm-based preschool. That has evolved a little bit, and I can talk about that a little bit more. But for the time being, I think the important thing to know is that we are basically doing farm education with kids. So if you want to move to the next slide, Martha. All right, so our mission, and here's one of our kiddos at one of our camp programs. At Go West Farm, we encourage connection to nature, our land, nourishing food, and each other. We give kids and families in our community the opportunity to explore and learn about our farm and practices and access to fresh local food. And so that really is our mission. We're really committed to our families that we work with, kids. We've found that it's really rewarding to have kids experience the farm, and we do that in the summertime with farm to camp programs. And then we serve, actually our farm is in Fountain, Colorado. And so we serve our community here. If anybody is not too familiar, Fountain is just south of Colorado Springs, just a few minutes. We're really kind of adjoining. But Fountain is a designated food desert, as well as a federally designated childcare desert. And so those are just 2 of the things that we have in mind in our mission of things that we would like to accomplish, is contributing to like the solution to that lack of fresh food in our community. Next slide. All right, so as I said before, I'm really passionate about just the environment, the earth. Being outside is like what fills my bucket, and same with healthy food. And I feel like all families should be able to at least have access to it. Sense of place and service to our community is really important to us. We live in a really beautiful location, and because of that, we feel a real sense of place, and like we should serve the land through regenerative agriculture, and then we should also bring our community into that. And then exploration and innovation, I will say it's one of our values, but it also is like one of the things that I think about on a daily basis, because as a farmer, you are constantly pushed and forced into exploring and innovating and coming up with new ideas, new solutions. And so that's one of the values that I probably practice most often. Next slide. All right, so one of the, I would say, if for anybody who's not an officey, businessy, administration type person, this practice of putting together the TOEs was always and continues to be one of the things that is really difficult and takes a lot of thought, but has been one of the most helpful parts of the business plan. And I will say, this is my original business plan from when I took the course. Every year since then, I have updated my business plan. And so I kind of will talk about some of those differences, but I think we all learned during the pandemic, one of the really important words was pivoting. And so there are definitely times where I had this idea at the beginning of what I thought my farm was going to be, and then I had to pivot because of some of these things, some of the threats and weaknesses that I had in my situation. So just a couple of them. Competition, that hasn't been a super huge threat so far for me. Environmental, as Michael talked about, last year was a really, really tough weather year for us because we do mixed vegetable production. And actually, even with our poultry and egg operation, that was pretty rough on the animals as well. Just all of that. We had flooding and all kinds of things happen on our property that we had to deal with. Weaknesses, farming experience. I am a new farmer, longtime gardener, but many of the things that I'm doing, I'm having to learn all about, and I've learned more in the last probably 3 years than I have in probably many, many years of school. And then the unknowns of the new property, that is a tremendous weakness, and that I've learned a lot. I'll just say I've learned a lot about water and regulations and lots of things that I didn't know I was going to be learning about. But the other thing that we had going for us is that we did have a lot of opportunities, and we still do. Our location is wonderful. We have a great property. It's beautiful. We have lots of space. We're here on about 10 acres. And we actually grow on about a quarter to a half an acre. So a pretty small grow area, and we have lots of room for expansion. So that's kind of an opportunity for us. Another one was as I said, in this food desert, definitely there's lots of opportunity. And actually, one of the questions or comments I guess I get most at our market is, how come this farmer's market only has one farm? And all I say is, I don't know, I'm here, and I'll tell my friends to come too. So, and then strengths, we have successfully started another business before 10 years ago, and that has been really successful. And so that really helped a lot with, just marketing. And we do definitely have a lot of customers who have followed us from the camp space into the farm space. So that has been really great because they kind of go together really well. Next slide. All right, so here are some of the goals that I had. And some of these I have completed, and some of them are still in process, and some of them I've scrapped and moved on to something different. So in year one, we did purchase a property. We did establish laying flocks, and so we have, depending on the time of year, because we do meat chickens and laying hens, we have 100 to 200 chickens on property. We have developed grow areas with tunnels, and we have kind of an irrigated field area, so we did that. Establishing a temporary farm stand is something that we haven't been able to do. I will say, when we go back to the toes, that was one of the things that we've had a really difficult time doing, is establishing a temporary farm stand, or a farm stand at all. It was eventually a plan to be more permanent, but we've run into regulation issues with our municipality. So for anybody who's interested in starting a farm within a municipality, I have a lot to say about that, and you can, for sure, I can answer some questions about that. It's more difficult than I thought, and because of some of the regulations within a municipality, I haven't been able to do some of the things that I've wanted to do, and that farm stand is kind of one of those. But we did develop a marketing plan, and that's been going well. In year two, we thought we wanted to hatch chicks and sell chicks, but we kind of scrapped that plan. It was just something that I didn't feel passionate about. And so we kind of moved on from that. Developing program areas, we have done that with our farm to camp program. We've developed community garden space and a space to have programs with the animals that we have here on the farm. So we have chickens that we have the kids interact with. They actually hatch out chicks during their camp experience. And so from those hatched out chicks, we keep the hens for layers on the farm, and then we process all the roosters for meat. And then we also do, we pack llamas. So we have llamas on the property. And then we also have goats. So the kids get to experience being with goats as well as some other animals, ducks and turkeys and geese and things like that. And so those are kind of like the main program areas that we've developed. Let's see. So hire seasonal staff. So in year two, we did hire seasonal staff. And then farm field trips, that's another thing that we are hoping to still do, but because of municipal regulations, we're having to go through quite an extensive process to be approved for that, which isn't finished yet. So, but we've been in the process with that for quite a while. In year 2, we did do our first full season of growing mixed vegetables, and we did sell at our local farmers market. And then for year 3, licensed year-round farm-based preschool. So we were hoping to do a farm preschool program since our experience is in children's programs. But we are fairly certain that we won't be doing that. We're kind of pivoting towards something different. Add additional livestock. It says llamas, alpacas, pigs. We did add llamas and goats. Establish a plant an orchard, so a fruit orchard. That's something that we've pushed off to year 4, so the next year. And then licensed school-age childcare. We'd love to be able to do farm camp on the property, but again, that's kind of caught up in some of the regulation stuff right now. And to develop an online store, we haven't done that. We just haven't felt like we're at that level yet, so we'll probably push that off to year 5. And then developing educational programs for farm customers is something that we're really interested in doing. Not that that would necessarily be like a direct financial benefit, but we have lots and lots of requests all the time for people to volunteer or to take a tour of the farm. And so we haven't really established any real way of doing that that's more formal. Occasionally people will come and ask me about that and I'll give them a personal tour, but we haven't done anything really formal. And then in year 5, it says hire full-time year-round staff. And I actually ended up doing that in year 2. And so it is me and one other full-time staff member. And then multi-purpose building, we're still in the works for that. So, and then the farm stand, as I talked about, and then developing some subscriptions to kind of boost those sales are kind of all goals that I have for the next 2 years. Next slide. All right, just some marketing strategies. I think most people are pretty familiar. I would say one of our strongest ones has really been social media and then using our current customer base. Next slide. This is just kind of our production plan of the things that we've proposed doing on the farm. We're pretty much in line for most of these. I would say we backed off the ducks a little bit just because we haven't been that interested in processing our male ducks. And so we haven't done as much as that as we thought we might. Next slide. This is just kind of like some of the revenue numbers based on that projection. Next slide. And then some operational costs. I would say probably the thing I spend the most money on is just the labor of getting everything together, and then feed, obviously. Next slide. And then some capital expenses. We did invest quite a bit of money in some of these capital expenses right off. And some of that was just because we had to have housing for our animals. And then just some of the major tools that we needed for our growing operation. And next slide. I can't remember if that's the last one. Yeah. And then Martha, do we have a couple minutes, or do you want me just to take it over to questions? I know I had kind of like put some notes about some of the other questions you had asked in the email, but we can also go to questions if you want.
Well, I was going to say, or maybe just a couple of responses to those questions would be great, and then we can move to Q&A. Thanks.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find some good ones. Okay, so this is a good one. You asked how do I put my business plan into action? The thing that I think has made this really successful for me, and I know that not everybody can do this, But immediately upon obtaining the farm or purchasing the farm, I was able to make the farm my full-time job. I will say I have another job because I still am involved with my first business. And I would say that primarily I focus and do my full-time work on the farm, and I do part-time work for the camp program. And that's kind of unmeasurable. I work an obscene amount of hours. As does my husband, who has the flip-flop schedule of probably 75% to 90% of what he does is managing our camp programs. And then he really is sort of like our administrator for the farm business. I'm more the boots on the ground. So he's involved in his like small amount of farm involvement that he does. He's really like our bookkeeper and kind of like business administrator, because he enjoys those things and he's really good at them. And he doesn't so much enjoy like the actual on the ground farming. So that's kind of how I've been able to make that work. The other thing is that I've found some really great resources that have kind of helped me along the way. And I would say if you're going into farming, like this really is a great community to do it in. There are lots of farmers who are really willing to give you all the information that they have. There are some really great resources out there. I've been really involved with NRCS. I had them come out and do an assessment on my property, and that was really helpful at the beginning when I didn't know exactly what I was doing, and they kind of helped me figure out where to set things up and how to set things up and what I had on the farm that was an asset. So that was really great. And they come up with like tons of data for you. So if you're a data person, that's really great information to get. And they will help you anytime, and that help is free. So take that free help. Actually, CSU Extension has really continued to be really helpful for me. I just attended a Women in Ag Summit, and this is the first year that they've had it. I just found out about it through the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. And so I just signed up for it. It was actually up in Brighton, and it was great though. And the woman who started it, I can't remember her name, but she works for CSU Extension as well up in Fort Collins. But that was really great because also since it's women in ag, there were lots of new farmers, but there were tons of really established farmers as well. And everybody was really great about sharing information. And then another one that I have been really involved in is Guidestone. If you're familiar, is a nonprofit, and they do a lot of work with farmers, and that is also free. Most of the things that they will do with you. I attended their Agri Summit last year, which was really great. And they also have a program called LandLink. So if you're looking for land, that's a really great place to start because they try to pair farmers with land, whether that's leased or owned. And they have like kind of a directory of land that they know is going to become available. So if you're up, especially in the Arkansas Valley area, that's a really great resource. So those are kind of some of the ways that I've kind of put my business plan into action, is just trying to absorb all the information that I can and try to talk to as many people as I can. And I know it's really scary at the beginning when it's just seems like an idea and you kind of do feel like that imposter, but it's really important just to like go out there and tell people what your ideas are and see what you can gain from them and what you can share. I think that's really important.
And Ariane, I was going to say, since we have Michael on now, it would be
Yeah.
great to maybe if we can move over to some questions so folks don't have to, wait anymore to ask those questions. That would be awesome. But thanks for sharing those
Definitely.
resources. That's great.
Sure.
We'll make note of those. So questions for, okay. There's one question for you here, Ariane. If you have a separate business and legal entities for the camp and the farm.
Yes, I actually do. So the farm is its own business. And one of the reasons that we did that is just, I guess the farm does get a little of a subsidy from, I guess it's not, I don't know if the technical term is subsidy, but the camp business does pay the farm business because we do farm to camp programs. We charge per child for the program, if that makes sense. So yes, 2 different entities.
Great. Let's see, Michael, there were a couple of questions for you, and one was about the Boulder County Open Space Program and maybe a little bit of the mechanics, how those contracts work. And then also, if you have crop insurance or if that's available to you.
Great questions. Hey, everybody. Nice to see everybody in person. Boulder County Open Space releases a request for proposal whenever they have lands up for lease. Some of them are suitable for grazing or are historically grass or grazing or row crops. So you can go on to the Boulder County Parks and Open Space website and sign up to receive those notices. They don't come up often, and for smaller scale, a lot of times these properties are big, hundreds of acres. So City of Boulder also has the same program, and you can go on their website to be notified of properties that are available. But it's a really great situation because the landlord, Boulder County, really cares about their farmers. So the rent is very low. For my 80 acres last year, my lease payment was $5,300, and that included water. So, you know, the cost of leasing the land is minimal, but all of the costs of creating a successful farm business on the land become substantial. But, you know, and my properties are very visible. So because it's a county owned property and I'm a tenant of the county, I think the expectations from the community are a little bit higher, especially on a property that's so visible from the main highway in Boulder County. And then as far as crop insurance goes, oh my God, I wish. You know, I grow 60 to 70 different types of vegetables, and the crop insurance programs really aren't designed for that. There is a whole farm revenue program that probably would have cost me about $15,000 to insure my farm. But even with a crop loss and a total loss nearing $100,000, the insurance would not have kicked in. So the programs aren't great yet, but I think the legislators are hearing that we need more help in this specialty crop area.
And Michael, we have a couple more questions specifically for you. So I'll start with one. How does your operation look different from a 1-acre farm?
Well, I started on a half acre and it was just me and a kilt. And I loved wearing my kilt, and I still do, because I could attach all my tools. I was the horse, I was the tractor, I was everything. And I brought in some volunteers to help, a lot of hand tools, you know, long handled hoes and wheelbarrows and shuffle hoes. And as I've scaled up, the equipment and infrastructure has scaled dramatically. So, you know, my stable of machinery, 3 John Deere tractors, cultivating tractors, implements, you know, folks come on the farm and they're amazed at my 4 different walk-ins where I can keep at 4 different temperatures, wash stations. So as I've scaled, really the infrastructure has to scale with it and directly in line. You can't get your infrastructure too big or too small for your crops. So it really needs to work in tandem.
Right. And actually, both of you, Ariane and Michael, could answer this. So maybe we'll let Ariane start. But what tool from this class impacted you the most? And what are you doing with the other acreage not under cultivation? And I can remind you the second question if you want.
Sure. I would definitely say the most important tool from this class is just, I would say the SWOT analysis actually is pretty good. I use it constantly, and not just for the farm overall, but when we're thinking of like starting something new, or like, for example, this year we've decided, instead of, we had kind of scrapped that chicks idea of hatching out and selling chicks, and we're moving to poultry, so meat, because we've actually found that after our first year of processing our own meat, that we found like that, felt like that was valuable, and we had a lot of interest in it. Actually, I don't know if anybody here has seen, or is from the Pikes Peak region. We were in the Gazette recently. There's an article about us processing our chickens for the first time. So we use that all the time to determine if something is a good idea. And it does kind of help you. It's hard because you don't want to criticize your own ideas, and you don't want to pick out the weaknesses and things, but it kind of forces you to. And that's really valuable. And then remind me the second question.
What do you do with the other acres that are not under cultivation at this time?
So a lot of our land is used for animal housing. As I said, we have about 200 birds on our farm at any given time. We also have llamas and goats. And then actually a good portion of our property is taken up by a pond. And so we don't necessarily do anything with the pond. We thought originally that we might be able to store water in it. That hasn't worked out. And so that's kind of what we do with the rest of the property.
Great. And from my perspective, really getting clear with mission and vision, and being able to get my pitch down to an elevator pitch. So when I'm talking to someone or trying to sell a restaurant, I can really set myself apart from other farms quickly. Also agree with the SWOT analysis. It's really nice. And something I'll definitely be moving through in a very detailed fashion as I try to reform my farm this year. And, as I was a very green farmer taking this program multiple times, getting real honest about the numbers as I was working with it and getting feedback, so that I was reality based, not dream and vision based. But for my property, we have a fair amount of overhead acreage, I call it, land that is not cultivated. I probably now have 35 acres in hay and pasture that we do hay and utilize the hay for a herd of cattle that come on to the property in the winter. They'll graze the pastures, and then we'll have them eat the hay bales on top of 4 acres of our vegetable beds. We also have a small orchard, a fair amount of infrastructure areas, boneyard, ponds, and one parcel that was about 15 acres that I've spent the last 5 years trying to really rehabilitate. Because when I took over the property, it really only had 2 states. One was muck and quicksand or concrete. And so over the last 5 years of really mineral amending and cover cropping and managing water flows, subsurface water flows, it actually is starting to act like soil. The goal there is that it could be pasture, hay, alfalfa, or move into row crops or grain crops.
Okay, and then there was one other question so far that I've seen, which is what is each of your water situations, and did you have to purchase water rights to start your farms? And before I let you roll with that, Martha, are we okay on time?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if there are continued questions, I'd rather, since it's so great to have Michael and Ariane here, we'll just stick with questions. We don't have to go to the breakouts. So whatever works for the class.
Okay, so each of your water rights or water situations, and if you had to purchase water rights to start farming.
Great. Well, I'll start on that. One nice thing about the leasing of land through Boulder County Open Space and City of Boulder Open Space is they do provide water. Since the 80s, Boulder County has been purchasing this agricultural land and the water rights attached to it. So they've got a great portfolio of water. And for the vegetable production, we have enough water. For the hay production, I lease water. So I'm working in 2 different ditch companies. One is Left Hand Ditch Company, and this is all snow melt and reservoir water moving through ditches to my properties. And the other system is Farmer's Ditch, which is quite an old ditch. So it has high priority, but it's straight flow out of Boulder Creek. So the water season on that property starts late, late by April, and ends potentially early. I've had it end as early as mid-August. So plenty of water when it's available.
Yes, so when we purchased our property, it was advertised as having water rights. Pretty soon into the process, we figured out that that wasn't actually the case. There was a well on the property, but I think the former owners who had been here since the 50s were then using it illegally. So we did have to figure that out. What we currently do is our well was from the 50s, so we redug our well. So we have like a whole new system. We augment our well. So we don't have water rights, we pay for water. And we do that through Agua, is the organization. And then we pay, it's really inexpensive though, when you think about it. I think we pay around $1,000 a year for water. And for the amount of water that we need, like we have more than enough. So that has not been an issue for us. The one thing that we had kind of hoped that we would be able to do is to fill our pond with water as kind of a reservoir and then use it from the pond. But we haven't been able to do that, partly just because our pond is ground fed and it gets pretty low at drought times. And we have ducks and things. And so we were kind of hoping to make that available to them, but it's not so much. So that's kind of what we do with water.
There's another question for you, Ariane, and I'm wondering for Michael too, but we'll start with you. Do you see, Ariane, that the water situation will remain stable over the next few years, or does that seem like one of your threats?
Just because we're in Colorado, I always think that it's going to be a threat, just because it's a thing that like has so much impact on what you're doing. And we're not really dry farming anything. We're watering everything. So it's not like we're, since we're doing vegetables, it's really essential for us. So I'm always worried that it will be a threat. It hasn't been so far, and it's been cost effective for us to augment. And the hard thing with that is with the augmentation is it's like people are putting in and people are pulling out. So if there's ever a time when people stop putting in, there's nothing for those of us who don't have water rights to pull out. So it is a constant threat.
And Jim, that's a really good question. I don't take any water out of the Colorado River system. That is more of a northern Colorado, and I'm right on the edge. But so most of my water comes out of the Front Range watershed. And, in drought years, water will flow, but it may not flow for very long. So it is nice that one of my largest block of farms, because I have 3 properties, 2 of them are in the left-hand ditch system and they have reservoirs. But it's hard to know from year to year what's going to happen. I mean, 22 was a drought year. 23 last year was an incredible amount of water. 20 inches fell on my farm. And we had flooded fields and drain tiles that ruptured and surfaced. So I think weather and just the unpredictability in weather, including water supplies is really a potential threat moving forward. And it's so unpredictable. Have no idea what's going to happen.
And quick add-on question, Michael, does it influence what you plant and timing?
It does. The property that came off of the Boulder Creek, Farmer's Ditch, it ends early, and I always know it ends early. So I like to get on that property my summer crops. So by the time the water's ending and I have to move over to a municipal supply, which is incredibly expensive, I'm just trying to ripen crops. So I'm causing water stress. I'm just giving them enough water to get them to fully finish fruiting. Whereas if I had a brassica crop or my fall crops, I would never put them there because I would run out of water. Since two properties have access to early water, meaning I could start pulling water honestly in March, February if I needed it, because I'm pulling directly out of a reservoir, that's where I'll put my early season crops and my late season crops, because the water season there goes till November 1st.
Let's see, Molly had a question, and we can start with you, Ariane. Could you speak to employee salary or hourly wage? And so how you pay your employees, what is the structure there, and then how you attract employees?
Well, I will say I'm really lucky because our primary business, the camp business, the one that we had first, has been a real feeder for the farm, because the camp business attracts people probably in their like early 20s who have just finished college to maybe like into their 30s. And a lot of them are really thinking about environmental issues right now and are really interested in farming. And so even the people who haven't had much experience at all seem to be interested. And so I've really had a pool to pull from. I have one main person who is full-time with me, full-time year round. I pay him hourly. And then actually in the summer, it's a lot more hours. So I pay him time and a half for anything overtime, but he is on hourly. And like during this time of the year, I pay him for a full week of like 40 hours of work. And so that's just kind of been really helpful. So I feel like if you're looking for some farm staff, I get inquiries all the time. I really can only pay one year-round person right now with the amount that I'm doing on my farm, but I get inquiries all the time about people who are really interested just because of the, just the kind of concern about our food system. A lot of people are really interested.
And on my scale, last year I ended up going through 30 employees. Normally I really try to shoot for 10 to 12 employees, including driver and field staff, and wash and pack, and I utilize Craigslist and Real Food Jobs and Indeed. But one of the challenges being in Boulder County is the cost of housing. I've been able to have people reach out, or I've contacted agricultural colleges, and I get some interest, but when they look at the price of housing, it just doesn't make sense in Boulder County. So my minimum wage right now is $15.69 in Boulder County, on a trajectory to be $25 an hour by 2030. And my minimum wage, just to have anybody even communicate with me and want to show some interest, is $17 an hour, up to $19, $20, $22 an hour for folks with experience. And I'm a production farm. Margins are thin. And so it's really tough when I'm getting an aspirational farmer that, I want to be outside. I want to change my life. I saw this movie. I read this book. I don't have a whole lot of experience to pay them $17 an hour. They just really don't provide the value necessary for the farm. Where, you know, and in my model, because I'm a wholesale producer, with a strong CSA, is about 50-50 wholesale and retail. I need people to be able to produce. So if I'm paying somebody $20 an hour plus all the additional costs, I'm pretty clear with them that they need to be producing $60 to $80 worth of value to the farm every hour they're on the farm. And, you know, a lot of people can't do that. That's one of the reasons I went through 30 employees, is if they just weren't able to show up enough and really be present enough and focus and work, it doesn't make sense. So the labor situation right now is challenging, especially in Boulder County. And we have a group of farmers that are coming together to create an association so that we can really get in front of our state and local legislators and commissioners and council members to let them know that, you know, vegetable production in Boulder County is challenged and may go away unless we deal with some of these issues around labor.
Let's see, there was a question also about how you compensate yourself in your business.
Well, in good years, I pay myself a salary at the end of the year, so I have some taxes taken out. And then I'll also draw as an owner on the business, which is not taxed by, is not a payroll, run through a payroll tax. And years like this, when there's a loss, and I saw it coming, I don't pay myself at all, sadly. One nice thing about running your own business is that there are expenses that fall appropriately under the purview of the business. So the business is paying for my cell phone and my auto insurance and my fuel on my car. And so there are ways that my living expenses can be reduced that are appropriate for a business. But I do try to pay myself something every year just to be able to maximize tax credits when we come down to tax season, which is upon us.
And I think to end on time, this will be our very last question. If either of you have used H2A. So if you've gone through that program.
You know, I have not. I've only hired settled domestic workers. I have hired let's say partially documented employees, but for the H2A program, a lot of the Boulder County farms of size are looking at the H2A program. Nice thing about that is they really come to your farm ready to work. Every day they work at the farm is life-changing for their family back home. They want to work. They want to work as many hours as possible. And in Colorado, with overtime regulations, we're really capping what they can do. Sadly, a lot of H2A workers are looking at other states that haven't, you know, put these limitations on them. But it's expensive because if I'm paying someone $15.69 an hour, the government says you have to pay an adverse wage, which is higher than the local minimum wage, and you have to pay for their travel back and forth from their home country. They need to be provided housing for free and transportation to and from the farm, housing, and to shop and to town. So the labor situation for the settled domestic workforce is getting bleak enough where even smaller farms like mine are really being forced to look into that program.
Thank you. So I want to I think we're going to stop there. And Ariane, if you want to talk about, if you want to type in the chat, answer that question about how you compensate yourself and if you've considered using H2A, that would be great. What I do want to do before we end is just make sure that everybody is familiar with the resources for the class. So I hate to cut off a good conversation, but I just want to make sure, because now we have to give you homework since we didn't go and do breakouts. But I just want to make sure you know where everything is. So I'm going to quickly share my screen here and just show you what's set up in Drive. And hopefully you've had a chance to look at this. This looks familiar. And so you'll see each class will have a little folder. There's information on the business plan presentations and the business plan structure, and we'll talk about that. Some information on insurance, and I'll add crop insurance in there as well. And then there's a folder of self-assessments, and this is just a tool we developed a really long time ago. I'm just going to open this folder quickly so you can see. There are some, if you just want to kind of see how you might rank yourself in terms of knowledge about legal risk, about managing, handling livestock, crops, and then we've got some business management. So like kind of personal attributes, business management. They're not scored like by us, but there's a scoring grid you can download. And it's again, just to kind of see, we did these tools in collaboration with some growers and might just give you a sense of where you need to beef up some knowledge. So those are just like a bonus piece of content there. This spreadsheet has some information. So this is the course syllabus. You can refer to that. And then in here, we listed all the events that are coming up. And so if you are just wondering what's going on, we'll try to have stuff around the state, but there are lots of good learning opportunities for folks who are involved in agriculture. And then we've got down here, we'll put everybody's contact information. So all of our presenters, and then your information, and hopefully this is okay. You can let me know if it's not, but we've got everybody who's registered for the class and their email information in here. And then if you want to post some questions in here on this tab that says questions, resources, you can dump questions and Nicole and I will go and retrieve them and, get resources to you. So I just wanted to make sure you guys could find that. And then in here is where I'll put the recording from today, the PowerPoints, and then you've got some examples of vision and mission statements, that TOES worksheet, and then there's another worksheet that helps you build your own mission and vision statements. So you can work on that until we meet next week. And I see there's more stuff in the chat. Let's see.
It's been a little bit of conversation, answering one question about woofing, and then
Sure.
just sharing gratitude for Michael and Ariane speaking today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and sharing. And I apologize for jumping in there, and I just want to make sure everybody knows where the resources are. So, and feel free to reach out if you don't, but yeah, thanks everybody for joining us this evening.
And Martha, thank you so much for keeping this program running.
Sure.
It started in Boulder a long time ago, and it's just such a huge resource for new and beginning farmers. So thank you so much.
Aw. Well, thank you for being such a stalwart presenter, Michael. We always appreciate your perspective and learning. So, all right, folks. Well, we will see you next week. Different channel, same time, and we will get that information to you. And we're really excited then to bring you our first class in Spanish. So, are there any final things that that anybody wants to throw in the chat or come off of mute? Okay.